Whether you're hitting the road or kicking back in the cab, it's time to take a load off with Big Rig Banter. Powered by alltruckjobs.com, your source for finding the trucking jobs drivers really want. Get ready to shift into gear and let the conversations roll.
All right, we're here with Norita Taylor, Public Relations Director for the OOIDA, that's the Owner-Operators Independent Drivers Association. Norita, thanks so much for coming on the show and talking to us today.
You bet.
So this episode is all about owner-operators, the distinct challenges they face, and some of the unique aspects of the job. And so, first off, I just wanted to ask you, how are owner-operators different from other drivers?
Well, first, let me point out that sometimes truck drivers go back and forth between the different types of roles. They may start out as a company driver and then later on become an owner-operator, or it's not unheard of for someone to spend a career as an owner-operator and maybe in their later years go back to being a company driver. But to answer your question, one of the main differences is that with an owner-operator, it's beyond a job. It's a business. It's a small business. It's something that there's maybe a little higher level of commitment. Maybe they'll have a niche market that they operate for, or regular customers. They might even have their own authority. So it's just a little bit more involved.
Absolutely, and kind of going off that, what are some of the specific challenges that owner-operators face across the industry?
Sure. Well, when you're an owner-operator, you are a small business and you're responsible for all the finances related to operating your business hauling goods, whereas a company driver is provided a truck and pretty much told where to go. With an owner-operator, you are responsible for finding loads and responsible for maintaining your equipment, making all the purchases related to it, permits if it's applicable. So there's a higher level of responsibility, which is also a good reason to be a member of our association.
Perfect. Yeah. So, of course, there are unique challenges, but then what are the specific benefits to being an owner-operator? Why would someone choose that as opposed to being a company driver or something like that?
Sure. Well, when you're an owner-operator, you can decide what kind of business you want to run, what kind of loads you want to haul, what kind of a business model. You can pick your own equipment, pick your own truck, maybe even pick the type of trailer you want to have. If you're going to be a flatbed or dry van or an auto hauler, all these different kind of options that you have for the type of business that you want to run. And also, when freight rates are good, that's good for you. That's an advantage for you. Whereas as a company driver, while there may be some raises involved, it's not likely that you're going to reap as many benefits from it.
Right. So another huge issue, I know just across the trucking industry in general, is that there's a major driver shortage right now. So what role do you think owner-operators can play in helping solve that driver shortage?
Well, the role that they can help play in addressing the driver shortage is pointing out that there is no driver shortage. It's basically a myth. What you do have is a major retention issue in trucking. A lot of high turnover, and a lot of that is because of low pay, working conditions, and oppressive regulations. And so what needs to happen is that, some of the regulations need to change, companies need to pay more, and they need to offer more home time.
Absolutely. And so that kind of leads me to my next point. The trucking industry in general is always trying to recruit younger drivers as, the veterans retire and everything. So do you think becoming an owner-operator is particularly attractive to young drivers like millennials?
Probably not. Any person who's starting any kind of business should spend some years getting to know that business, working as an employee, and so it's probably not something that a person, depending on what age frame you're talking about, but
Right.
my recommendation to anyone wanting to become an owner-operator is to spend a few years as a company driver first.
Absolutely. That does sound like probably a better tactic for most younger people, especially with the startup cost and all of that associated, right?
Right.
And so something else that has been in the headlines recently and is still in headlines, and people are always talking about it, is the recent ELD mandate. Could you tell us a little bit about the OOIDA's position on ELDs and this mandate?
Sure. Well, first, we do need to make a distinction between the use of electronic logging devices and the mandate. We have been challenging the mandate for several years. It is our contention that it is not a safety measure, but rather something that big trucking has pushed for in order to drive out their small business competitors. Now, we don't have a problem with anyone who wants to use some sort of electronic device for logging their hours. For years and years, there are companies that have used what are called fleet management systems that incorporate what's called an AOBRD. And those are still being used today, but what we have an objection to is mandating that everyone use them.
Absolutely. And so what are some ways that your organization and your drivers are pushing back on this issue?
Well, for a number of years we have pushed back by way of lawsuits. There's been 2 lawsuits. The first lawsuit we won, and the second lawsuit we did not win. We've also filed for an exemption for small business truckers, and that exemption request, along with several other exemption requests from other organizations, is still pending with the FMCSA. We have also been pushing for a bill that was introduced by Representative Brian Babin out of Texas that would delay the mandate for a period of time. So those are some of the things that we've been doing.
Well, perfect. Thanks so much, Norita, for taking the time to talk to us. That was a lot of great information, and I'm sure all of our readers and listeners are going to gain a lot of value out of just this whole conversation in general. So thank you for coming on.
You bet.
Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Big Rig Banter. For your next job, check out alltruckjobs.com, the premier online source for finding the best driver jobs in the country. Browse hundreds of positions by freight or driver type to get back on the road with confidence. Click subscribe to keep the conversations coming. Until next time on Big Rig Banter.